Hi everyone, my name's Kate and I'm here at the Eastside Freedom Library in St. Paul, Minnesota. And in the last 2 weeks, I've talked to you about the books that are in the Eastside Freedom Library. But another wonderful thing that happens here is events. So when it's safe for us to all be together, this is a library that hosts people from all over the world to share with us the ways that they stand up for freedom, the art that they make, the experiences that they've had, and the stories that they have to tell. And one of the people who has come through here to the Eastside Freedom Library is a woman named Queen Quet from the Gullah Geechee Nation. And the Gullah Geechee people are descended of freed and escaped enslaved Africans along the southeast coast of the United States. So South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida is where most Gullah Geechee people live. And Queen Quet wrote a book called The Sandman's Daughter, and she has donated it to the Eastside Freedom Library, and she autographed it for kids who come here to the Eastside Freedom Library to read it. Now, it's a long book with lots of beautiful pictures in it, so I'm not going to read it to you today, but I hope when it's safe for you to come here to the Eastside Freedom Library, you come and check it out. So I have 3 stories for you today. And the first one's one that you might have heard before, because I think a lot of kids have read this one, but it's one that I like, and it's called Clack Moo, Cows That Type. Farmer Brown has a problem. His cows like to type. All day long he hears click-clack moo, clickety-clack moo. At first, he couldn't believe his ears. Cows that type? Impossible. Click-clack moo, clickety-clack moo. Then he couldn't believe his eyes. Dear Farmer Brown, the barn is very cold at night. We'd like some electric blankets. Sincerely, the cows. It was bad enough that the cows had found an old typewriter in the barn. Now they wanted electric blankets? No way, said Farmer Brown. No electric blankets. So the cows went on strike. They left a note on the barn door. Sorry, we're closed. No milk today. No milk today, cried Farmer Brown. In the background, he heard the cows busy at work. Click-clack moo, clickety-clack moo. The next day, he got another note. Dear Farmer Brown, the hens are cold too. They'd like electric blankets. Sincerely, the cows. The cows were growing impatient with the farmer. They left a new note on the barn door. Closed, no milk, no eggs. No eggs, cried Farmer Brown. In the background, he heard them. Click-clack moo, clickety-clack moo. Cows that type, hens on strike, who ever heard of such a thing? How can I run a farm with no milk and no eggs? Farmer Brown was furious. Farmer Brown got out his own typewriter. Dear cows and hens, there will be no electric blankets. You are cows and hens. I demand milk and eggs. Sincerely, Farmer Brown. Duck was a neutral party, so he brought the ultimatum to the cows. The cows held an emergency meeting. All the animals gathered around the barn to snoop, but none of them could understand moo. All night long, Farmer Brown waited for an answer. Duck knocked on the door early the next morning. He handed Farmer Brown a note. Dear Farmer Brown, we will exchange our typewriter for electric blankets. Leave them outside the barn door and we'll send Duck over with the typewriter. Sincerely, the cows. Farmer Brown decided this was a good deal. He left the blankets next to the barn door and waited for Duck to come with the typewriter. The next morning, he got a note. Dear Farmer Brown, the pond is quite boring. We'd like a diving board. Sincerely, the ducks. Click-clack-quack, click-clack-quack, clickety-clack-quack. So that's a silly story about people who are animals that are working, demanding that they get something else, but it's rooted in a real struggle where people stand up for their rights. And I'm going to read you a story about real people, not animals, who stood up to get something from their boss. And this book is called Brave Girl. Clara and the Shirtwaist Makers' Strike of 1909. It's written by a woman named Michelle Markle. A steamship pulls into the harbor carrying hundreds of immigrants and a surprise for New York City. The surprise is dirt poor, just 5 feet tall, and hardly speaks a word of English. Her name is Clara Lemlich. This girl's got grit, and she's going to prove it. Look out, New York. Clara knows in her bones what is right and what is wrong. What's wrong begins a few weeks after the Lemlichs moved to their tenement in America. No one will hire Clara's father. They will, however, hire Clara. That's right, Clara. Companies are hiring thousands of immigrant girls to make blouses, coats, nightgowns, and other women's clothing. They'll earn only a few dollars a month, but it helps pay for food and rent. So instead of carrying books to school, many girls carry sewing machines to work. Clara becomes a garment worker. From dawn to dusk, she's locked up in a factory. Rows and rows of young women bend over their tables, stitching collars, sleeves, and cuffs as fast as they can. Hurry up, the bosses yell. Rat-tat-tat-tat-tat, hisses Clara's machine. The sunless room is stuffy from all the bodies crammed inside. There are 2 filthy toilets, 1 sink, and 3 towels for 300 girls to share. Clara learns the rules. If you're a minute late, you lose half a day's pay. If you prick your finger and it bleeds on the cloth, you're fired. You're fined. If it happens a second time, you're fired. The doors are locked and you're inspected every night before you leave to be sure you haven't stolen anything from the factory. But Clara is uncrushable. She wants to read, she wants to learn, and at the end of her shift, though her eyes hurt from straining in the gaslight and her back hurts from hunching over the sewing machine, she walks to the library. She fills her empty stomach with a single glass of milk and goes to school at night. And when she gets home late in the evening, she sleeps only a few hours before rising again. As the weeks grind by, Clara makes friends with the other factory girls. At lunch, they share stories and secrets as if they were in school, which is where they belong. Clara smolders with anger, not just for herself, but for all the factory girls, working like slaves. This was not the America that she had imagined. The men at the factory tell her they've been trying to get the workers to team up in a union. Then they'd strike, refuse to work until the bosses treat them better. But the men don't think the ladies are tough enough. Not tough enough because they're girls? Oh, yes they are, and Clara knows it. She'll show them. From then on at the sewing tables and on the street corners, Clara urges the girls to fight for their rights. When the seamstresses are overworked, she says strike. When they're underpaid, she says strike. When they're punished for speaking up, she says strike. And the girls do. Each time Clara leads a walkout, the bosses fire her, and each time she pickets, her life is in danger. The bosses hire men to beat her and other strikers. The police arrest her 17 times. They break 6 of her ribs, but they can't break her spirit. It is shatterproof. Clara hides her bruises from her parents. A few days later, she's on the picket line again. And the other girls think, if she can do it, we can do it too. For weeks, the small strikes go on, but the bosses find other young women to do the same work for low pay and more hours. We must do something bigger, thinks Clara and other union leaders. Something huge, a giant strike, at every garment factory in the city. The union holds a meeting. Throngs of workers pack the seats and the aisles and the walls, and the halls thrum with excitement. Clara listens to speech after speech. The speakers, mostly men, want everyone to be careful. 2 hours pass. No one recommends a general strike. Finally, the most powerful union leader in the country gets up to the podium. Not even he proposes action. So, Clara does. That's right, Clara. She calls out from the front of the hall. The crowd lifts her on stage and she shouts in Yiddish, "I have no further patience for talk. I move we go on general strike." And she starts the largest walkout of women workers in U.S. history. The next morning, New York City is stunned by the sight of thousands of young women streaming from factories. One newspaper calls it an army. Others call it a revolt. It's a revolt of girls, for some are only 12 years old, and the rest are barely out of their teens. In the coming weeks, Clara is called a hero. She lights up a chilly union hall with her fiery pep talks. Her singing lifts the spirits of picketers. When a group of young thugs approach, she yells, "Stand fast, girls!" And they do. All winter long, in the bitter cold, in their cheap, thin coats, tired and starving and scared, the girls walk alongside the men on icy sidewalks of the picket line. They spill out of the union halls, blocking the roads, filling the street corners and public squares. Newspapers write stories about them. College girls raise money for them. Rich women, swathed in fur coats, picket with the factory girls. By the time the strike is over, hundreds of bosses agree to let the staff form unions. They shorten the work week and they raise salaries. The strike emboldens thousands of women to walk out of garment factories in Philadelphia and Chicago. And the strike convinces Clara to keep fighting for the rights of workers. Her throat is hoarse, her feet are sore, but she has helped thousands of people, proving that in America, wrongs can be righted, warriors can wear skirts and blouses, and the bravest heart may beat in girls only 5 feet tall. So that's a story that reminds us that you can be brave. You can stand up for things even when no one else is saying them. And sometimes you can be successful, but it's scary to stand up when nobody else is. So I have one more story for you, and this is a story that my friend, Miss Rosemary, who's a teacher at Bethlehem preschool, gave me, and it's called Galimoto. And it's a story about a little boy in a country called Malawi, and she let me borrow this to show you, which is an actual Galimoto that someone gave to her to go along with the story. So I'm going to put it right here while I read it, and then I'll show it to you again when we're done. Condi opened up an old shoebox and looked inside. These were his things, and they belonged to him. Inside the box, there was a ball made of many old plastic bags, tightly wrapped with string. There was a knife Condi had made from a piece of tin can, and a dancing man he had made from dried corn stalks. In Condi's box, there was also some scraps of wire. He'd been saving the wires for something special. Now he took them and the knife from his box. "I shall make a Galimoto," Condi told his brother Ufulu. Ufulu laughed. "A boy with only 7 years cannot make such a toy. You don't have enough wire." "I will get enough wire," Condi answered. Condi took his knife and wire scraps and went to the home of his friend, Gift. "I want your wires," Condi told Gift, "and I'll give you my knife for them." "Why do you want wires?" Gift asked. "I want to make a Galimoto," Condi answered. Gift ran his fingers over the tin knife. "It's a good knife. I'll cut a dancing man with it." Gift took a handful of wires from his box of things and gave them to Condi. "That's not enough wire for a Galimoto," he told his friend. "I will find enough wire," Condi said. Condi put his wires in an old plastic bag and took them to the shop of his uncle. "Good day, second son of my brother," his uncle greeted him. "How can I help you?" "I want some wire," Condi told his uncle. How will you pay for it? I have no money, Condi answered, but you have wires on your old packing boxes from the city. Those would make a fine galimoto. So you want to make a galimoto. The son of my brother is a clever boy. Take the wires. Chee, chee, chee. Condi could hear the grinder of the flour mill. Many women with babies tied on their backs waited in the hot sun. Others arrived carrying heavy baskets of maize on their head. Condi squeezed through the crowd. He was very near the front when someone grabbed him. The woman began yelling, "Stop that one! He goes out of turn!" Condi was being pushed and shoved. Suddenly, the mill stopped its grinding. "What is it?" the miller shouted. The woman pointed at Condi. "Ah, no," Condi said. "I have no maize to grind. I only want wires for the galimoto." He opened his bag to see. "Playthings! For this you keep us waiting," the woman grumbled angrily. "One cannot eat wires." An old woman shook her hand at Condi. The miller shrugged. "There are some wires out back. Go and take those." In the back of the mill there was an open door, and inside the door was a pile of old motor parts. There Condi found some very thin wires wrapped in red and yellow and green plastic. "I can scrape the coating off," Condi thought. "These wires will hold my galimoto together." Still, he did not have enough for a galimoto. Condi passed some young children playing on an anthill. One was Mundi, the small sister of his friend Gift. She had a long piece of wire which she stuck in the hard dirt. "Little friend," Condi called as he came near, "you cannot catch an ant that way. Go, fetch some water, for with that and a stick, we will fool them." When Mundi came back, Condi poured water around one of the holes. "Now they will think the rains have begun," he explained. Then he stuck a stick down the hole, and gently he pulled it out, and on the end was a large ant. "My stick is better than a wire for catching ants. You may have the stick, and I'll take the wire." Condi knew there was a trash heap behind the bicycle repair shop, but the gate was locked. Condi climbed over the fence, and in the courtyard he found some broken, bent spokes from a bicycle. He climbed back over the fence with his bag. "Thief! Help! Police!" Condi heard a voice call. Children came running from the marketplace. Men came running from their shops. They made a circle around Condi. "Thief!" they pointed. A policeman arrived. He grabbed Condi by the shoulder. "What are you doing?" he asked. Condi showed the policeman his wires. "I want a galimoto," he explained. "I need these wires." "Galimoto," the crowd murmured. They shook their heads and went back to their business. "Take your wires and go," the policeman said. Condi took his wires back to the shade of the red flame trees in his village. Nearby, his mother and sisters pounded their maize. They sang of the hard work they were doing. Condi sorted his wires. There were thick pieces and thin pieces. Some wires were long and some were short. Condi banged and bent them and twisted ones with a stone to straighten them. Then he began. The thick wires made the frame. He wrapped the very thinnest wires in the joints to hold the galimoto together. "My galimoto will be a pickup," Condi planned. "It will carry maize to the city, and it will have an antenna for a radio," he smiled. Condi worked all afternoon. He poured the strongest wires around a pipe to make the round wheels. A sturdy piece of bamboo made the rod for the steering wheel. Finally, the warm, toasty smell of maize porridge cooking over the village fires told Condi it was time to go home. His brothers and sisters admired his work. "So, you found enough wire," Ufulu said. "Yes," Condi agreed, and he parked his galimoto next to his box of things and ate his supper. "Let the moon be bright for us to play and sing tonight," Condi could hear his friends singing in the distance. They were calling him to play. Now he carefully guided his galimoto over the dusty path. "Galimoto!" someone cheered, and one by one, Condi's friends formed a line behind him. "Yay, Galimoto!" they began to chant. Condi saw the shadow of his galimoto cast by the moonlight, racing alongside. "It's a fine galimoto," he thought proudly. "Perhaps tomorrow I should make my galimoto into an ambulance or an airplane or a helicopter." So this is an example of the kind of thing that he made. Now this one's not a pickup truck, this one's more like a bicycle, and if you pull it, the little person looks like they're riding a bicycle. And a family brought this back for Miss Rosemary, and she shows it to her children in her preschool every year when she reads this, and I was excited to show it to you. So I hope you'll join us next time.
Thank you for visiting our video. I'm Beth Cleary.
I'm Peter Ratcliffe, and this is Orso, the library dog.
We are the co-founders and co-executive directors of the East Side Freedom Library in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Our mission is to inspire solidarity, work for justice, and advocate for equity for all. If you enjoy our programming and want to support our work, please visit our website, eastsidefreedomlibrary.org.